The first plenary session will look at delivering green growth, how to implement green growth policies on the ground. We were just talking about the importance of action. So this session will look at how we're going to actually deliver green growth. The moderator is one of the world's preeminent experts on climate change. He has served over 20 years in the Australian Foreign Service and has extensive experience in government sector. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator, Mr. Howard Bamsey, the Director General of the Global Green Growth Institute. He is also affiliated with the Centre for Climate Economics and Policy at the Australian National University and is a special advisor on green growth. From 2008 to 2010, he was Australia's Special Envoy on Climate Change and Deputy Secretary in the Department of Climate Change and Energy Efficiency. And Mr. Bamsey was formerly head of the Central Australian Government Agency on Climate Change, the Australian Greenhouse Office. And in 2006 and 2007, he co-chaired the United Nations Dialogue on Long-Term Cooperative Action on Climate Change, which launched negotiations within the Climate Change Convention. So as you can see, he is very well equipped to lead the discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our moderator, Mr. Howard Bamsey, a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this first plenary session for the summit. This year, the organisers have been keen to take a very practical approach to highlight the practical story of green growth around the world. And we have this morning 5 distinguished representatives of countries whose stories are very different. And they will be telling you about the obstacles they've faced and the various ways in which they've overcome them in getting green growth done. As the President of the Assembly said in his keynote address a few minutes ago, even the most practical details of getting green growth done are connected to national policy and ultimately to international policy. So you don't just start a task with no context. All of these stories will be in a context. So what we'll do this morning is we'll hear from our lead speaker first, and then the 4 remaining speakers, each with a very different story about green growth. And then we'll have some general discussion, inviting your comments and questions and responses from the panel. We do have to finish just a few minutes ahead of 12 o'clock, and so there will be pressure on the discussion to conclude early. For that reason, I'm not going to introduce our speakers in detail. You have all of their bio detail in the little handbook, the program for the summit. And with no further ado, I'm going to ask our lead speaker, the Minister for Development Cooperation from Denmark, Dr. Christian Friis Bach, to take the floor.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ministers, experts, ladies and gentlemen, it's a true pleasure to be here again and to continue our strong discussions on how to achieve and deliver on green growth. Just 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, I was in Nepal visiting a small community. They have had no access to modern electricity before, but now suddenly they had, because of hydro, because of solar, because of biogas, and because of improved cook stoves. The woman avoided getting sick from the smoke. The children could do their homework in the night because they had light. The tailor was tailoring away and increasing his production. And even the local chicken, they had light during the night, so they were eating more, they were growing faster, and obviously dying earlier. It was growth. It was environment, it was social improvements all coming together in this small village. And when you can do it in a village in Nepal, we can do it in the entire world. 1 million households in Nepal have benefited from this market-driven program. I was just 2 weeks ago in Ethiopia, and I'm sure we will hear more from the Minister Getahun, where I visited a small village as well, where they, by means of the productive safety net program now, had unleashed the potential of the village. They had 5 days a month where they worked together, and what they have achieved was remarkable. They had worked together in harvesting water, capturing water from the very hilltops all the way down. They had increased the water level by several meters, and they had turned what was before a desert-like area into a green food basket, harvesting 3 times a year. A remarkable revolution with combined social efforts, environmental efforts, water harvesting, all of it coming together in this small village. Where they can do it in Ethiopia, we can do it in the world. I visited Vanuatu, where they have these hurricane-proof windmills. They take them down when the hurricane comes, and they put them up again when it's over. And interesting enough, the more solar and the more wind they add to the electrical grid out there, the cheaper prices can they offer to customers. Prices matter a lot. Prices are crucial for sustainable development because prices drives incentives, and it's very complicated to get prices right. Take the big-scale initiative, Sustainable Energy for All. Now, if we want access to each and every individual to modern electricity, then we need prices to be low. If we want efficiency to go up, then prices should be high. And if we want renewables to come in big time, we want prices to be right. That's an extremely complicated policy prescription that we have to solve together and share experiences in how it can be done. The first thing to do is the obvious ones. Remove fossil fuel subsidies. This can turn into a win-win situation. But obviously, in many countries, we've seen social unrest. We've seen people reacting because they have depended on the fossil fuel subsidies by means of getting access to cheap transport or heating in their houses. So social unrest can follow from sustainable development policy changes. How do we solve it? Well, we must use all the instruments at hand. And right now, the World Bank is giving an offer to countries like Egypt. If you remove fossil fuel subsidies, we will help you in installing a social safety net. Combining these two tools, you can get win-win-win situations. And indeed, you can get 4 to 5 times higher poverty impact with social safety nets than you can for the same price with fossil fuel subsidies. So it's good for combating poverty, it's good for the climate, it's good for the economy, because these subsidies are an increasing burden on the financial ability of so many countries. So removing fossil fuel subsidies, introducing social safety nets, and perhaps combining with payments for environmental services and feed-in tariffs for sustainable energy, that is a win-win-win-win. Well, you can go on for an hour or so. That's really a good opportunity for the world and for each and every individual. So prices and policies matter. We need goals, and we need global goals, and we need sustainable development goals. And here we are really moving forward in the world. The high-level panel have launched their report, and for the first time we have now a good proposal for a set of goals that will combine all 3 elements of sustainable development, or to be true, all 4 elements of sustainable development. There's a focus on social issues, ending poverty, ending extreme poverty by 2030, a historic vision, and we should work and stand together in achieving it. There are environmental goals, access to water, access to sustainable energy, and protecting biodiversity and soils. Those goals are there, the environmental goals. There are economic goals, jobs, opportunities for everybody. We need millions and millions of jobs for all the aspirational young people in the years to come. That should be part of our global goals. And then the 4th dimension of sustainable development is there as well, peace and security in societies and in communities and in families. fighting or stopping the violence coming from conflicts, stopping the violence we see in too many families around in the world. This is a historic vision, and let's work together to achieve it. The benefits are there, and we have here now, once again, as in the village in Nepal or the village in Ethiopia, understood that sustainable development can only be achieved if we combine all elements of sustainable development at once. We need partnerships. The Global Green Growth Institute is all about it. The Global Green Growth Summit, where we are here, is inspiring, engaging, and forming new partnerships. We will host in October in Denmark the Global Green Growth Forum, again bringing together public, private partnerships that can achieve change in the world. Together with Korea, China, Kenya, Mexico, and Qatar, we invite you there also to participate and to engage and to inspire us. We need new innovative financing mechanisms. Some have been mentioned already. In Denmark, we have tried to install a climate investment fund where we, by means of putting in a small amount of public funds, can mobilize 3 to 4 times as many funds from pension funds and corporate investors. And by working with companies, we can 10-double that amount in terms of climate investments. It's really a good deal. We need to use public money to leverage private investments in sustainable development. If you look back in the 90s, climate change and the environmental debate was about obstacles. It was about stumbling stones. Countries believed it would stand in their way of achieving a prosperous future, growth, and increased income for the populations. And as Howard, Bamsi, and I discussed yesterday, back then we talked about, in the climate talks, it was about burden sharing. That's not inspirational at all. Today we are talking about opportunities. We are talking about sharing not burdens, but ideas and opportunities. And today, sustainable development in Nepal, in Ethiopia, in Denmark, in Vanuatu, and we heard the many good examples from Mr. Jagderu. Today, sustainable development is not longer a stumbling stone. It's a building block for a prosperous future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. That overview connecting the very practical details of life in villages to global policy, a story I think we're going to hear repeatedly. Our next intervention is from the Minister for the Environment and Natural Resources from Mexico, who is going to tell us about the way in which Mexico has dealt with at least some of the obstacles on the path to green growth. Minister, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Howard. First of all, I want to thank the Institute as well as the Korean government for this very kind invitation. I am really very honored to be here with all of you, sharing some of the experiences we have in Mexico. As you may know, Mexico has, since last December, a new government, and President Peña Nieto has honored me with the responsibility to take care of the environmental and natural resources agenda, which, as I said, is a big honor for me. One of the priorities of the new administration, as you may very well guess, is economic growth. Mexico, and I guess like any other country, has to fight poverty. That is, for us, priority number one. We have to fight poverty. If we are not able to fight poverty, any other program that we do to protect the environment, I guess, will have very little effect. Let me tell you a story, because Howard told me to tell real-life stories. Some years ago, I was listening to an engineer who was talking to a group of owners of forests in Mexico. And he was telling these people, these owners of the forests, of the land, what was going to happen if they kept cutting trees like they were doing it. And I remember this engineer telling these people that if they kept doing like that, in 10 years, they will get rid of the forests. That in 10 years, there was going to be no water. That in 10 years, the soil was going to be spoiled. And that in 10 years, all the biodiversity that they have was going to be killed and spoiled. And I remember one of these peasants telling this engineer, "Sir, I am not worried of what's going to happen in 10 years. I'm worried about what my kids are going to have for dinner tonight." So, and I guess this example is very similar in many different parts of the world. If we don't fight poverty, then the results of all the environmental programs that we try to implement, I guess, will have very little effect. We have to grow, that is no question. And of course, this growth that we are going to have has to be with full respect of the environment. This is one of the priorities that our new president is telling us to do. We have to fulfill the environment. We have to fulfill this growth, protecting the environment, and that is why we need to learn from other countries what they are doing to promote the green growth. Since last October, we have a general law for climate change. This law gives us, together with other legal dispositions, the framework to reach our goals, especially to protect the environment. This law, which I understand is one of the few in the world, imposes Mexico the obligation to reduce emissions by 30% by the year 2020, as well to produce at least 35% of clean energy. Also, to fulfill this law, just last week, we presented our national strategy for climate change, which sets the basics, among other goals, to greening our economy. This strategy presents my contribution for what we have to do on a 10, 20, and 40 years scope. This strategy is based on 8 strategies and objectives. First of all, this strategy, what it wants to do is to protect population. I guess no other policy has a real value if the main objective is not to protect the population, and especially the population with the lowest income in my country. Also, we want to protect the basic structure of Mexico, like energy, hospitals, high roads, and of course, electricity production. That is basic for us to keep it in good shape after all these effects that we are already suffering from climate change. Also, we have to take advantage of our huge biodiversity. I guess you all know that Mexico, with a little bit more than 1% of the surface of the earth, has more than 10% of the biodiversity of the whole world. That gives us a chance to exploit with sustainability this huge resource, but also it's a responsibility because we have to protect it not only for this generation of Mexicans, but for future generations of Mexicans, and of course for the whole world. Also, another of these goals is to produce clean energy. Maybe you know that Mexico has a lot of resources, especially oil and gas, and the goal that we are establishing through this strategy is that we have to increase the production of clean energy. And together with the production of clean energy, we have to be more efficient in the use of energy. And the 6th of these strategies is to get sustainable cities. That is a priority. As you know, in Mexico, the cities are controlled by the municipal government with the support of the state government. And one of the goals we have there is waste management, proper waste management, not only to make it a cost for the municipal government, but to try to make it a good green business. Yesterday I discussed with my colleague from Denmark, and I'm happy to tell you that Denmark is going to share with Mexico their vast experience in waste management, which I think they are one of the leaders of the world. Also, we want to improve agricultural and forest practices, because nowadays in Mexico there are big subsidies to support the agricultural business for the production of food. Basically, we have to make them be more efficient with the use of water and also with the use of electricity, that for our peasants in Mexico is almost zero cost. So because they have no cost, of course they are not making an effort to be more efficient. That's something we have to do. And finally, we have to reduce the short-lived climate pollutants. Why? Because they are, as some scientists have told us, they are nowadays the most important generators of climate change, and because they are also cheaper to control, mainly for transportation and other sources of these short-lived climate pollutants. I know that we have a lot to learn from other countries. That's why we are here. That's why we want to participate as much as possible with GGGI. And I know that we are able and we want to offer all other countries our experiences in all these matters, particularly for Central and South America. I guess Mexico has a good legal framework, and we have a lot of experience, and not only for Latin America, but for any other country. We are really willing and will be very happy to share with you our experience with this law and with all the strategies we are making. Finally, I'm confident that through summits like this, the Institute is helping all of us implement the green agenda, which of course is a priority for my country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. First, for dealing with this question which arises so often of the inevitability of trade-offs between growth and the other elements of green growth, and the way in which development of strategy can help overcome, to some degree, that obstacle. Let's hear now from Senior Minister and Minister for the Environment, one of the world's longest-serving Ministers for the Environment, Dr. Mock Marriott.
Thank you, Howard, Babsi. Thank you very much, and good morning. First, I would like to thank the GGGI to invite me and delegate to join this very important summit. I have my slide projection, and in order to keep my presentation a little bit short, I try to summarize some key points. The case study in my country about green growth. I have 5 key points to show you today, and now I would like to raise point 1. Point 1, we have as a question 1 raised by GGGI. In what country and sector are you seeing the most interesting evidence on the implementation on green growth plan? And what are the key aspects of the evidence, and how can GGGI build on such experience? For Cambodia, the sector indicating evidence on implementation of green growth plan are water resources, development and management, renewable energy, and energy efficiency, sustainable land use, agriculture, ecotourism, transport and infrastructure, human resource development, green technology, as well as green finance and investment. Regarding the key aspect of this evidence, The concerned line ministry, institution at national and subnational level greatly engaged in green growth implementation and protecting environment, whereby each line ministry has taken a environmental area and green growth strategy as a core strategy in planning the development according to the field and implement the development project in accordance with the concerned field. For example, the Ministry of Tourism is carrying out the movement of good Yokman and good recreation center and increasing ecotourism places, which really participate strongly in environmental protection and biodiversity conservation. Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fishery is promoting non-chemical products through the use of organic fertilizer. The Ministry of Industry, Mine and Energy is producing renewable energy, especially biogas and other natural gas, and solar energy. The Ministry of Water Resources and Meteorology lead management and conservation of water resources. And the government focus on intensive agriculture with high policy in water for rice cultivation. Here, water is well recognized as having a critical role in enhancing agricultural productivity and rice production as well as ecological safety system. In that regard, the conservation of forests as the crucial source of water resources is highly needed and need to be enforced. And GGI have raised how can GGI assist in this program? I think that all that I propose in my slide here. Point two. Point two, is there a perceived trade-off between climate change action and growth? Or is the concept of green growth well established and recognized? What can GGI do to support this? In Cambodia, no perceived trade-off between climate change action and growth occurs. Climate change, from mitigation to adaptation, measure is part of Cambodian green growth, focusing on the coherent and balanced integration of economic, environmental, social, and cultural dimension into the overall national development plan and process. Green growth has been well established and recognized within the country. The Royal Government of Cambodia has placed a top priority on green growth with environmental sustainability as the core for the achievement of Cambodia's Millennium Development Goal and poverty reduction. So we have National Green Growth Roadmap was established in 2010 with priority on 7 axes. And green growth institutions have been established, National Council on Green Growth and the General Secretariat for Green Growth also. On March 1st, 2013, the Royal Government of Cambodia adopted National Policy on Green Growth and National Strategic Plan on Green Growth 2013-2030. And at the moment, mainstreaming green growth into National Strategic Development Plan 2014-2018. Climate change is to achieve green growth goal. Point 3. Is there a danger that green growth is not inclusive enough? There are trade-offs between green growth and poverty and inequality reduction. What can GGI do to help understand a relationship between green growth and poverty better? In my experience, green growth tends to be inclusive enough, and it needs to be more inclusive through deep integration on green growth policy and strategy into all development sectors. The rectangular strategy takes the 4 pillars below as the core dimension of sustainable development and green growth: agricultural development, infrastructure rehabilitation and development, private sector development and employment creation, and capacity building and human resource development, Regarding the 4 pillars of the rectangular strategy, the government has done its best to overcome key challenges in terms of growth, employment, equity, efficiency, and good governance. It reinforced the rectangular strategy implementation by assuring macroeconomic stability with the private sector as the locomotive of growth, job opportunity, and land sufficient for farmers, and ensuring the forest conservation. Based on the achievement of the Royal Government of Cambodia, the comprehensive macroeconomic and political stability, combined with continuing economic growth, Cambodia, with the achievement of poverty reduction by 1% per year, brought about a significant economic transformation from 1993 to 2012 as follows. GDP per capita increased from $229 to $987, expected to increase to over $1,000 in 2013, as Cambodia likely to move from LDC country to low income status in 2015 and 2016 to the middle income status in 2030 and high middle income status in 2050. The growth and macroeconomic stability, poverty declined from 39% in 1993 to 20% in 2012. Through this good continued economic growth, Cambodia has been evaluated as a country in the 15th rank in the world for having achieved very high economic growth in the last 15 years. Further, the country was categorized in the 5th rank among the developing countries, which has accomplished the target of the MDG. In the 10 years past, the country fell short of rice, and it needed international community to provide a grant aid in rice. Today, Cambodia is very proud in exporting rice and expect 1 million tons of rice export in 2015. As part of green growth achievement, the government has introduced all policy new action on land to allocate public land for farmers, following a slogan, no farmer without land for cultivation. And under some like Prime Minister expression, deforestation planning for agricultural land dividing into 2 strategies. One, to respond to the people need of farmland for our farmer increasing from 6 million, and today our population increase almost triple. Second, land concession for agro-industrial plantation such as rubber, plant oil, and sugarcane, and so on, for the assurance of macroeconomic stability and job creation for our people. It effectively implementation the old policy new action on land. The government has issued main principal strategy as follows: assuring the balance of economic development, with the sustainable management and forest conservation. It remains about 9,000,002 hectares of, or 57% of total forest cover, natural forest cover, relative to the entire surface of the country. Territory equal to 18 million, about 18 million hectares. Adjunct to the land reform, the government has implemented deep reform on fishery and forestry to redress the poverty issue and reinforce sound management of natural resources and forest conservation. And as a result, since we have this reform policy, we assure well that the fish stock in our water. And suggestion I note here, I don't need to read. Point four, the main obstacle that you have been facing in your own country in terms of developing and implementing a green growth strategy. we lack investment in green growth, green technology transfer, and we do need technical and financial assistance from GGGI and member countries to advance the implementation of the green growth strategy, in particular, human resources development and more pilot projects on the key development sector as already identified above. Economic growth is a facilitating factor or a means for the reduction of poverty, but it is by no means a sufficient condition to resolve or develop environmental and environmental issues. The government has also recognized that economic growth alone is not sufficient to ensure poverty alleviation. Social justice, equity, and sustainable development with durable prosperity for all people. In that regard, poverty could not be eradicated for the moment and still pose a major challenge to people in the rural, ranging from insufficient quality of public health service, clean water, to electricity. So I learned from the minister from Denmark, His Excellency Dr. Christian Fred, that I support well his appreciation about this issue on the social safety net, and Cambodia setting up this social policy net policy well, and we have a great success in this area now. In short, our strategy is sustainable inclusive growth, which ensuring equity and creating wealth through sustainable, transparent, and sound natural resources management and partnership. The last point number 5, is talk about experience on green growth in developed and developing countries substantially different. Why do you think developing and emerging countries seem to have embraced the concept on green growth more strongly than developed countries? Regarding the experience on green growth in developed and developed countries, they are sustainably different, substantially different. For the developed countries, they are advanced in green technology and human capital, and they develop their economy through a clean and green development approach. In the low carbon growth, the developed countries have enough capacity for human resources, finance, and technology to cut down greenhouse gas. But developing countries do not have enough means to address challenge and issues posed by climate change. I don't need to raise the example. And in my country, government focused on the mitigation and adaptation. And mitigation also we move to clean energy also, and other means for mitigation. But like I already mentioned in my briefing, I raised about the policy on my government on the forest conservation. Forest conservation play a very important role for not only for physical or biological environment, for balance of ecosystem in my country, but we know well that recognize well the role of forest in the carbon credit. And now we start, like in the slide show you, we start to sell the carbon credit about 400 million hectares to the private company in bond forest that we keep conservation very well, and we continue to sell the carbon credit until 2 million hectares, and step by step, and all in phase of assessment now to see the quantity, the volume of the carbon credit. And thank you very much for your kind attention. And sorry if I might speak a little bit long. So.
No, thank you very much, Minister. It's thank you very much for telling us about the very impressive commitment of the Cambodian government to green growth across the board, engaging at the very first stages the private sector and as the locomotive of growth, and then also ensuring that all ministries, all relevant ministries were involved. Our own experience in GGGI shows both of those factors as particularly important. We're now going to hear from Dr. Oyen from Mongolia. She signed yesterday the establishment agreement and brought Mongolia into GGGI, but she has had her hands on green growth for a lot longer, and we'll hear her story now.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Good morning to you all. Kamsahamnida, as they say here. In Mongolia, green growth is a unifying issue that everyone can agree upon. We have the political will to make the green growth a reality, and we also have a culture of livestock herding pastoralism that teaches us to deeply value our environment. We come from a very harsh and very cold climate, and Mongolian culture, from the times before the Genghis Khan and also to the present, has also been one of the adaptation and innovation by necessity. Mongolia is an example of a country that has not contributed much to the causes of climate change, and yet is experiencing a disproportionate impact, especially on our nomadic livestock herders. We have a small population, it's less than 3 million, and until recently we experienced very little industrial growth. Well, the world temperatures have risen by an average of 0.7 degrees Celsius, as you know. The average temperature in Mongolia has risen by 2.1 degrees Celsius since the temperatures has been measured since 1940. That is 3 times more than the world average. As a direct effect, we have a lot of desertification, pasture degradation, and melting permafrost are threatening nomadic pastoralism. Our herders and nomads see climate change up close and personal on the ground. These environmental changes affect their livelihoods, and not only their livelihoods, but also their very existence. But at the same time, Mongolia and other countries disproportionately affected by climate change should not see themselves simply as victims in need of handouts. This is now a global problem, and it requires a global transformation to green economies. Mongolia and other countries, developing nations, have the opportunities to lead the world in this transformation. We have in Mongolia a number of projects that are aiming on mitigating and adapting to the climate change, and one of the recent examples is that Mongolia signed a bilateral carbon offset mechanism with Japan. We were one of the first countries to sign joint crediting mechanism with Japan earlier this year. We in Mongolia stand ready to rapidly adapt and innovate, and actually to leapfrog in order to become a good example of green development worldwide, where our government is keenly aware of the necessity of converting our brown economy into a green economy. And we have begun to put in place policies to promote the change. The current government in Mongolia, which was created about 10 months ago, has upgraded the status of Ministry of Environment into what's called the main co-ministry, and we restructured it into Ministry of Environment and Green Development. Last week, our cabinet discussed the draft of the Green Development Strategy paper that is to be submitted to the Parliament for the discussion and approval. We're aiming that within the next couple of months, we'll be able to have the Green Development Strategy approved, which will put the basics of the green growth in our country. However, while Mongolia may possess the political will to transform into a green economy, we of course require partnerships with developed countries. These partnerships can help provide the technical expertise, strategic planning, and financing to assist us in making the transformation to a green economy. That is why the Global Green Growth Institute is so important. And as Mr. Bamsi said, we became the new member country of GGGI, and we're very, very excited and looking forward to be a member of the GGGI family. In recent years, due to a natural resource boom, and some of our richest gold, copper, and coking coal deposits on the earth, and all were neighboring with China, so we're in close proximity to the Chinese markets that are very hungry for resources. Mongolia has experienced unprecedented growth. For example, in 2011, our GDP was 17.5% grown, and last year, 2012, our economy grew by 12.3%. However, we do not intend to unlock the mineral wealth of Mongolia in one generation. We decided that we should slow down on opening the whole of country to the mining and exploration. We freeze the issuance of new exploration and mining licenses, and the total area that was covered by mining rights has gone down in the last 6 years from about 45% of the country to about 12% of the country. At the same time, the area that is covered by national parks and protected areas has gone up to about 17%. This mineral wealth, if mined responsibly and managed properly, has, of course, the potential to support a transformation to a green economy, the economy that is based upon renewable resources rather than the finite ones. Of course, as we begin to mine massive coal deposits, we must also ask ourselves how the carbon emissions from these coal resources will be offset, even if we will be exporting most of the coal and not actually burning it ourselves. Mongolia also has tremendous green energy resources in wind and solar. And like our mineral resources, these wind and solar resources are in close proximity to the population centers of China, making Mongolia potentially a very large exporter of green energy. In 2 weeks, we will be proudly launching the first wind power station in Mongolia, which has a feed-in tariff agreement with our government. We also offer tax deductions and favorable conditions to renewable energy, both exporters but also producers in Mongolia. The wealth derived from Mongolia's vast natural resources and this economic growth that we have been experiencing in the last 5-6 years must benefit society as a whole. Right now, even as there are more and more luxury cars on the streets of Ulaanbaatar, so too are the more and more Mongolians from the countryside and rural areas moving with their felt houses, which is we call in Mongolian ger, to the ger districts around our capital in search of a part of this newfound wealth. Almost half of the population of Mongolia now lives in and around Ulaanbaatar, and again, half of the population in Ulaanbaatar live in those ger districts and with no water and sewage infrastructure. Too often, the people in districts continue to be unemployed or employed at low wages. We see the transformation to a green economy has the potential not only to address the stresses of climate change that are severely impacting Mongolian pastoralism, but also to create green jobs that can help ensure a shared economic prosperity. Last week, on the 5th of June, Mongolia was the proud global host of the World Environment Day 2013. We had United Nations Environmental Program team led by Achim Steiner, who announced Mongolia joining the PAGE, which is the Partnership for Action for Green Economy. We're also very excited and looking forward to be one of the model countries to, on the path to the green growth. There is both public support and political will to make things happen. Of course, this is a very challenging task, considering that current economy is pretty much brown, and our greenhouse gas emissions are about 7 to 10 times higher as far as the amount of CO2 per capita is concerned. But we think that with still largely pristine nature and low population, we can, as I said, leapfrog to being a good example. But I want to emphasize that it's not a mere rhetoric, and it is a true aspiration of Mongolians. We look forward in the next 2 days to have innovative solutions and partnerships that can arise from the activities facilitated by the Global Green Growth Institute. And I truly believe that working together and utilizing our global collective intelligence, technological resources, and strategic partnership, we can create one of the most rapid economic transformations in history, and that's the transformation to green economies. Thank you very much, and thank you for welcoming Mongolia as a member of GGGI, and thank you for organizing this very important summit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you for that, account of a robust and confident approach to the task of transforming an entire national economy. We'll now hear the story of green growth in Ethiopia, the country with which GGGI has partnered the longest.
Thank you, moderator, and I would like to thank, first of all, the GGI, the organizers, and the Korean government for inviting us to this important discussion. From the Ethiopian point of view, Ethiopia has a plan of development that is aimed at keeping the country in the middle income country by 2025 with the development of many sectors. While preparing designing this strategy, the country could identify the path for the development and has selected the climate resilient green economy development path because of two reasons. One is knowing that going through the conventional way of development path will create a threat to its own development activities because of climate change. And secondly, Ethiopia firmly stands not to contribute at least to global climate change through its economic development. According to the strategy that's developed, so because of that, we have developed the climate resilient green economy, and this strategy has 4 main areas of focus: increasing crop productivity and livestock while keeping the greenhouse gas emissions to minimum. Secondly, reduction of deforestation and degradation of forests. And the third one is focusing on energy, that is clean energy, particularly on hydroelectric energy development. And the other one is on working on the transport that is clean, which is not emitting greenhouse gas emissions. Referring to the agriculture, I think we have started to implement this strategy, in particular through watershed development and land management, because green growth without ensuring food security and without creating jobs to many of the citizens will not be successful. Sometimes there will be a comparison between selecting the green path, growth path, and the conventional path. In the case of agriculture, if you just increase the amount of inorganic fertilizers, then you may have more production, but you will end up through polluting the environment. But instead, focusing on the organic type of agriculture, then in many ways, you will benefit from the ongoing activities through better health and a better environment, at the same time also better economy. Currently, we are implementing the climate resilient green economy and the green growth through community participation, treating many degraded areas, rehabilitating degraded areas through community participation, and implementing the productive safety net program, and as such, through the implementation of sustainable land management. Because Ethiopia is, as you know, most of the land is highland areas on which the majority of the economy depends. That covers around 45% of the country, but more than 85% of people are living in those areas and mainly dependent on agriculture. So rehabilitation of those degraded lands through land management activities and water harvesting, soil and water conservation, and the tree plantation is the major tasks that we are undertaking. Beyond that, the activities like the hydroelectric power generation, that's from the hydroelectric, because Ethiopia is located in highland areas and it has big rivers that can generate hydroelectric power. And we are also working on that, and that will help to promote green growth. That is the energy that's not using fossil, and the energy that is not using any other that is having more greenhouse gas emissions. The other one is transportation. The country has had the firm stand to develop the transportation system, particularly the railway transportation system that mainly purely depend on the electricity that's generated from the hydroelectric. Again, in one or another way, that's again the clean and green growth path that we are having. Above all, the integration of all these activities, the watershed management activities, in natural resource management activities, tree plantation, implementing the reduction of forest degradation and deforestation, integrated with water harvesting, integrated with land rehabilitation, that again generating through high amount of water, and again that's integrating it with energy generation with again the transportation and urban development is a path that we are following in the green. As it was mentioned by His Excellency Baz, who was mentioning about the Ethiopian experience, there are a lot of land that are rehabilitated currently from the implementation, and there are a lot of land that are rehabilitated and created an asset for creating jobs for youths and the women, particularly in rural areas. Currently, around 100,000 youths could manage to have jobs in rural areas, in degraded and in rehabilitated areas, through beekeeping, animal livestock fattening, and selecting better crops that can support them. So that is again, that's because of the green path that we are following. In terms of challenge, however we are undertaking these activities, there are challenges that we need to actually look forward in the future. One of the challenges is the technology transfer. In terms of getting the technology that can help to foster the green growth path, crop, livestock, and at the same time also the other technologies that are required for promoting green growth is one challenge. The other one is the financing. Because when you are following the green growth path, you need the finance that's actually used as an input. That may be required only for as an initial one. Later on, through continuous development, the financial problems can be resolved in that. Another one is in terms of capacity. Capacity building is very important. For the case of verifying, identifying, and checking whether the green growth path has contributed and what amount of greenhouse gases that we could abate and make mitigation of the activities that we undertake is very important. So capacity building for all in terms of use of technology, in terms of combining the different technologies, harmonizing the technologies, and in terms of, again, looking into the market situation. Because one of the green growth paths that we need also look to has to benefit the community in such a way that in trading, in cutting tariffs, and in terms of finding the market that focuses and support, of course, the products that are produced through green paths has to be encouraged. So for that purpose, in terms of analyzing the market and in terms of analyzing the whole technology it requires a capacity. The market itself has to encourage the farmers, and the market itself has to encourage also the users and the producers, so that they can be encouraged in terms of promoting and in terms of implementing the green growth process. So for that purpose, the capacity building and support in terms of the system of developing, the system of, again, analyzing the whole process, and the skill of the people who are working in that, the skill of the farmers, training to the farmers, training to the expertise are very much required. The other one is in terms of organizational structure, system. Beside you implement a system and you have a skill, unless you have a well-established, a well-organized institutional setup, that will be difficult to actually manage the whole process. So institutional management and institutional organization as part of the capacity building is required. And through that, I hope we will keep our world and our globe free from failure, because as much as possible, we should not be greedy. If we think of development today and keep the future generation to continue, so that the earth continue again, then we need to look into selecting what path of development that we have to take. So green growth path is taken by Ethiopia as one of its main paths that will keep the country, in one hand, resilient of climate change, and secondly, foster its development. Through that, the future generation will still survive, and our planet and our future will survive as such. So if every country or every nation takes firmly that stand, then I think we will enjoy the planet, and the planet will also enjoy us, and our future generation will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. A story from the Agriculture Minister in Ethiopia speaking about the transformation of the whole of the Ethiopian economy. We now have 10 minutes or so for your participation in the discussion. I should say that you've noticed that Minister Christian Friesbach has left. It's not because he was concerned about your observations or questions to him, and he will try to return. He was called away for an urgent meeting that he couldn't avoid. So I'd now like to hear your own comments, your questions. If you're making a comment or a question, please identify yourself and your affiliation and indicate to whom you're addressing the question, if there is one member of the panel in particular you'd like to hear from. We do have microphones in the room. Do we have someone ready to start? Yes, some in the front row here, please. Microphone was coming to you, it's now going away. It's on its way back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Arunabha Ghosh. I run an independent think tank in India called the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. I wanted to thank all the excellencies for their very inspiring remarks. The comment I had was actually picks up on what Minister Friesbach mentioned. Although he's not in the room, I think it was a very pertinent comment, which is that for energy access, our prices need to be low. For efficiency, prices need to be high, and for renewables, prices need to be right. And I'm just trying to think about, he gave some ideas, but I'm trying to push that idea forward. And one of the key things on the ground when solutions are implemented, whether by social entrepreneurs or others, is the need for working capital. If you don't have working capital, you're dead as a business. And when we talk about green growth strategies, often the focus is on the upfront capital investment, which is setting up your business, etc. And I wonder if the ministers in the room and others can can think about how do we ensure that there is a continuous flow of capital to get businesses moving and allow them to kind of expand operations, reach out to more difficult areas, etc. Because we can set up social enterprises, but we won't make them sustainable unless those prices are right in terms of the entrepreneur and the consumer. So making sure working capital is very much on the agenda would be something that could trigger more sustainable green growth strategies. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that question. We'll collect a couple of questions and then turn them back to the panel. Simon Zadek.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a question for Minister Oyun from Mongolia, which is Simon Zadek, Global Green Growth Institute, whether the plan would be to take some of the royalties that Mongolia will earn from its mineral extraction and to flow it through into major green investments that you were talking about in your presentation. It is extraordinary that there are very few mineral-based economies that have used their royalties for that purpose, and it would be very interesting to hear whether Mongolia is joining the dots between that revenue flow and the green growth vision that you were describing. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Another one on financing, and one which is commonly asked in many countries that are highly dependent on minerals, including my own just at this very moment. Yes, another question halfway up the room, please.
Bruce Au from Dalberg, a global advisory firm focusing on development issues. It's very exciting to hear all the strategies and policies of your government. I'm very curious to hear how your local politics have managed to reach this level of commitment. Can you share a little bit of what were the key stakeholders that were obstacles to the process, and what might have changed that allow you to reach today's consensus? Thank you.
Thanks very much for that question. I think we'll now turn to the panel. So we've had three different questions. One on how do you get enough political momentum? Remember President Jagdeo earlier said the fundamental problem with green growth, with responding to climate change, is lack of political will. How is it in your countries that you've gathered that political momentum? And then a couple of questions which you might choose to answer on financing, in particular to Dr. Oyun about the possibility of using minerals revenue to finance green growth, and then a broader question about how to ensure that working capital is available after enterprises commence their operation. Who'd like to begin? Minister Guerra.
Okay. From here?
You can keep speaking, yeah.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, if I understand well your question, you know, in Mexico we have a law that forces the government to reach the goals. You know, Mexico is a rather small producer of gases, of green gas effect. We produce only 1.4% of the global emissions, but still the government is doing a big effort to make a reduction. For one reason, because the geographical position of Mexico makes us very vulnerable to climate change. So if we make a reduction, we want to have the face to go with the big countries which are making big amount of emissions and tell them to reduce theirs. This is the only way to have a face and come with them and fight for benefit of the whole world. That is what I would have to say. And in relation with prices, you know, Mexico is a market-oriented economy. It's a very open economy, so everything has to be done on a market basis.
Thanks, Minister. Anyone else? Dr. Oyun?
Yes. Is mic on?
Yes,
is my
it's
mic
on.
on? Yes,
Yeah.
good. I'll reply with the last question, how the local politics reached, or how the political momentum was reached. I don't think it was very visionary, progressive politicians deciding, okay, it's a very good progressive way to go. I think it was a necessity of the day. We had a transition to market economy in 1990, and as you know, most of the post-communist countries, economies collapsed, and we had very difficult, very desperate transition times where we were desperate to attract any investment, we were desperate to get any economy going, so environment was more or less overlooked. And for example, 10 or 15 years ago, a lot of, well, not a lot of investment, but a bit of investment that was there went into a large number of small-scale alluvial placer mining, and especially gold mining operations. And most of those operations were not very responsible mining operations. They left a lot of areas degraded, and currently we have about 500 or so sites in Mongolia, not very large in acreage, but small scale, but a large number of places where the area is degraded, left abandoned, and not really very well rehabilitated. So of course that created very little support among the local population for mining and other industries. And whether we like it or not, mining is one of the main ways for our economy to get integrated into regional and world economy, and that's because we're a small market, we're far away from infrastructures, and we're far away from the ports, we're landlocked between China and Russia. It's very difficult to compete against Chinese manufacturing if we want to export anything. So currently about 95% of the export is mining. So whether we like it or not, we have to rely on mining at this stage. And if we want to rely on mining, we have to have a lot of support from local population. And in order to have the support from local population, we have to have very high environmental safety and technology standards now. So that sort of triggered politicians to think, okay, we have to have more sustainable policies. And also we, as I said earlier in my speech, we decided, okay, we'll slow down on mining because it's a small population. We don't want to open the whole of country for mining. When we were desperate for any investment, we opened the whole of country for mining and exploration operations. And at some point about 7-8 years ago, 45% of the country, and Mongolia's territory is pretty large, was covered by mining and exploration licenses. And we decided sort of gradually to decrease the number of acreage that will be open for mining operations. So currently the territory is about 12% that is covered by exploration and mining titles. So that, and of course, the giving low priority to environment created, for example, big pollution for the Tul River, which is the main river flowing through the Ulaanbaatar. We have air pollution because we have very cold winters. We have a lot of problems with air pollution in the capital, so that's created air pollution. So all these problems that have been accumulated has created this political momentum that we can't actually go like that. Like I think it happened in many countries, you know, develop now and clean up later strategy. And but because I think there is still very good hope for Mongolia, because the large percentage of our country is still very nice, pristine nature, and it's a small population. And I will also reply to the other question. So Simon, yes. So how do you, with the political momentum and with now mining revenues flowing in, how do we channel that into more sustainable and green technologies? For example, we decided, okay, if you invest in renewable energy, we will give you a lot of tax deductions and feed-in tariffs. If you import any equipment for renewable energy, there will be zero tariffs on imports and VAT. Also, we are currently introducing the deductions on environmentally friendly and other renewable energy technologies and products. If you sell environmentally friendly eco products in Mongolia, we are planning to put zero corporate tax on these products, and we're hoping to invest a lot into forestation and in the future maybe for hydropower stations. And we're investing currently a lot in human capital, which I think is very important. We feel it's very green as well. 2 weeks ago, Cabinet decided that any Mongolian that will be accepted in the top 100 international universities will get a scholarship from the government, and we're also offering now scholarships for local students to study in local universities, but also in vocational training institutions. So I think investing in human capital and renewable energy and other maybe IT technologies will be a good solution to diversify our economy, because we don't want to be dependent only on mining. It's too risky.
Thank you very much, Minister. Anybody else? Yes, please, Minister.
Yeah, with regard to the political will, I think for the case of Ethiopia, if you remember our late Prime Minister Malla Zenawi, one of the strong leader who was actually advocating and working on climate change aspects. We know in Ethiopia that drought is one of the problems that is challenging the development of the country. In the past, we used to face those problems, the drought problem, and erratic rainfall, and other problems are critical for that. While agriculture is the main economic source of income and source of economy, and definitely the greenhouse gas emission will affect the country. But at the same time, also the country has to develop. So if the politicians are not committed in this aspect, I don't think that there will be any other commitment. So there is no problem in that regard, because the leadership has taken the lead in developing. It's not the expertise issue, it is the national issue and it's the politicians' issue. So there is no doubt in that regard. You know, currently as we make an analysis with regard to greenhouse gas emission, we estimated around 150 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent that is emitted. If we keep on without doing anything, abating the greenhouse gas emission, by 2030 that will go up to around 400 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. So the major source of that is agriculture, nearly 85%. Around 50% that's coming from agriculture, and 37%, 35% is from forestry. So if we are not doing something on that areas, and the political leadership is not leading it, then that will be difficult for that person. So the commitment from the leadership, commitment from the politicians is the forefront. So you should not worry in that regard. With regard to capital, I think the important thing is that the capital flow is important, but if that has to be linked with investment, has to be linked with the change in terms of economy and in terms of benefit that is the community are getting from it. And the products should also get a market. So the capital that we need at the initial stage, that maybe is an important part, particularly in technology. For us, for developing countries like Ethiopia, you may not need to shift or to obsolete certain technologies for undertaking green growth, because we are already in. But what we need is at the initial, we may need to have a technology that can keep our growth green, and our technology, industries, and other activities that we undertake for products, producing product, to ensure it has less greenhouse gas emission, then I think that in that case, the initial capital is required. The developing nations have that capacity. I think win-win, in a win-win situation, that would be possible. But we have to take care in that regard. We should not make whether to have a green growth path or not as a prerequisite, so that will challenge actually our step forward. I think from the viewpoint of time, I think I just wanted to respond this way.
Thank you very much, Minister. We are now out of time, but I'd like to give Dr. Makmaret a moment to respond if he could take it.
Mr. Howard. I agree with all our the panelists. Political will is most important point one, like His Excellency raised, and the commitment. Particularly, we have to highly consider the role of the subnational level and the role of the people, the community, to participate or no with our policy, our strategy. So why, I do feel that under the leadership of our government, and always we highly concentrate on the livelihood of the people. We serve the people. We talk like that, So we develop a law, any policy, any strategy based on the interest of the people, of course, interest of nation. And that, why, in Cambodia case today, I briefing a little bit long. We get a great success in the progress in economic development in my country, and poverty alleviation, dropped from, if you look at 34 years ago past now, during the Khmer regime, genocide, we had nothing to eat. 100% of our people poor and very poor. 10 years later, with this policy strategy, we started to have not enough rice to eat, but we have started to produce rice and food for our people. And year to year, like I mentioned, right now we export rice. Really our pride for our nation. And in any area, when we read about the mining sector or other sector or financing, the gap you mentioned, we always highly consider all of those issues. Particularly, my government focus on how can the stability of the macroeconomy, no inflation. Even we face a lot of problems and the crisis, the effect is really low. We compare to the neighboring country. Under 5%, always 3%, 3.5%. Because we know well to balance the gap, even we encourage the private sector as a locomotive of our economic growth. So why in the green, we invite all the green investors to come more and more to my country, bring all technology, transfer, capital, flow, and so on like that. I think we can, and now we start to get already the green investor come to my country. I'm very happy to hear that, and to see also the progress in all areas on climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation. And of course, we have a partner. A partner means different developed countries who always friend of Cambodia support us, different partners, and support us also to develop our country. So why only 14 years we got peace, When we develop our country very fast, and if someone visit my country 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and now you can see a progress, tremendous progress, and people really happy with the government, really happy. And you know, on mining, we highly consider mining, and now we have all law. Mining, we have law also, but petrol and gas now in fail of developing this law because they really a critical issue also on petrol and gas. So we need more experience to learn about that because crooks or so why we have to consider this because we have potential of this, but we learn the bad experience from some country in the world. So we have to be careful in dealing with the petrol and gas, etc., like that. You know. But you know, we like one word more. I highly appreciate the minister from Denmark about social safety net.
Yeah.
That you know, we now in implementation, we work with the grassroots on social, in all health, education, and so on, and we're very proud with my government about education. You know, we highly concentrate on human resource development. Our strategy, my Prime Minister always raised it, not the student serve the school, but the school serve the student. It means we build the school at the village, not at any. We have more than 1,000 of village, 6,000 something. But we build a school at the village. Even high school also at the village. Now we start to build a school.
Thank you very much, Minister. That's a good point to conclude on because it was one of the points that Dr. Christian Friesbach began on. That is the importance of peace and security for the development of green growth. We have run over time. My apologies for that. That's my responsibility. Meanwhile, though, Dr. Christian Friesbach has managed to return, so would you please join me in thanking him and the members of the panel for providing us with this great diversity of insights into how green growth is beginning to develop in a range of different economies in very different circumstances, but with many themes in common. Please join in thanking me.